Here.
Councilman Stiver.
Here.
Councilman Lance is absent. Councilman Cruz will be attending. He's running a little late, so he's present, but will be here shortly. Councilwoman Seymour. Present. And Council President Jordan.
Here.
Yes, 5 members present.
Okay, thank you. We will begin with the first item, and that's a request to permission to apply for the SAFER grant. Mr.
Madam President, to Honorable Council and Mayor, I'm going to turn this item over to Fire Chief Keith Rowley. I do want to say that we have successfully administered a SAFER grant, and I think we have a unique opportunity in front of us. The grant application is due by March 6th, and I'm going to ask Chief Rowley to walk the council through a staffing scenario, which, quite frankly, we currently have, Keith, correct me if I misstep, 88 funded positions in the fire department. The PAR report had made reference of an ideal staffing level of 105 a number of years ago. So, Keith?
Good evening, Madam President, Council, Mr. Mayor, Madam Attorney, and Mr. Zorn. Can you hear me okay? Okay. As Mr. Zorn said, the highest staffing level that we've been at was 105, and that was what was recommended by the PAR report. We have not been at that level. I think I put in the council level in over 20 years, and when we sat down and actually looked at it, it's been almost 40 years since we've been at that level, back in 1970, or since we've been below that level, not at that level, but below that level, was back in 1974 when our numbers were brought up to 105. I think we have a very unique way. This is not guaranteed, but I brought along my grant writer, firefighter Ken Wheaton, paramedic Ken Wheaton, first of all, I want to introduce you to him because he's done a remarkable job over the years of securing millions of dollars in grant funds for the city, and we think this is an opportunity to, we get this, to bring our staffing level back up to the 105 level, at least for a couple of years, and then we have an opportunity where we wouldn't have to lay anybody off, and then we could attrit back down to a level of 96. We would like to always keep it 105, but we understand with the financial pressures that the city's communities are under now that may not be possible. We have looked at our numbers and to maintain overtime and really plan for the future for our aging workforce and to maintain operational ability on a day-to-day basis. The 96 number is about as low as we can go, where we could still control overtime and man our apparatus. So if you look, I'll run you right down the timeline, which this opportunity just kind of fell all into place. We're presently at an 88 members, 89 with myself, but 88 line personnel. We're asking if we get the SAFER grant, we'd hire 17 firefighters. That would bring us up to our 105. Per the SAFER grant requirements, that during the SAFER grant period, anybody that would retire, we would have to replace. We are losing 2 members in December of 2015. We would have to replace those. Those are budgeted positions. I have them in the budget right now. Again, in December of 2016, we lose 2 then. We would have to replace those 2 firefighters. Near the end of the grant period, we would lose 4. Those are budgeted positions. We would replace those. And then in 2018, we're losing, these are all positions that we're losing, traded positions that these people have to retire. They're in the drop plan and they have to go, so it's guaranteed. We're going to lose 9. 9 from the 105 would bring us right back to the 96 level where we're at now. So basically the federal government would be paying for the 17 positions for a 2-year period. and then we could go right back down to what our budgeted number would be at 96. Do you have any questions?
Question. When you say 100%, that includes benefits?
That includes wages and fringe benefits, not overtime, because that's not.
Hopefully you don't need as much overtime as you
Yeah, and I have a plan to, right now we run with 22 on duty a day. This would bring our numbers up, and as we drop down, if we have people off on injury or we have people on sick leave, we would drop down to a lower number above the 22, but a lower number and not replace those in overtime until we got down to a number like we're at today. So it would drastically reduce our overtime.
Okay. And you have, you already know the people that are going to be attritioning out.
That's correct. I have a list. I can show you that list if you. This is what it looks like. The highlighted, the dark to the light are they're leaving. Yeah, they're leaving. Yeah, we know exactly when they're leaving. We can plan for it. Back in the 2010 SAFER grant, the problem was the financial pressures were building at that time, and the budget was getting tight. So we couldn't guarantee that we were going to be able to maintain those positions.
Right.
So that's why we didn't take the grant. We worked out a different option through a lot of negotiations with FEMA to where we would hire 4 and use the other money for retention. Well, they're not really doing that now. In this plan would be to hire and then trip that down after the grant to the level of 96. So no layoffs.
My other question was, you've got people in the pipeline or not, or you're going to start recruiting?
We'd have to start recruiting. I had a meeting with Mr. Zorn and Human Resources, Lori Siskin today, to discuss how to develop that list, have an active list, and that list would be, once that list is developed, it would be good for 2 years, and then that would take care of the hiring of these people.
And these would be paid cadets?
Well, they'd be hired as firefighters.
Okay.
Yeah, they wouldn't be coming in as reservists. They'd be coming in as firefighters.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a couple comments. What's not covered in the grant is equipment and training.
Correct.
And I want that disclosed. The other piece, and you stated, we spent a good hour with HR this afternoon on the staffing. I believe with or without the grant, we're heading on a position that we're going to have to go through a recruitment, given the vacancies we have and the overtime that we're incurring. So, we're going to be crossing that threshold with or without the grant. What the other thing that I learned today that I thought was insightful is our contract, the paramedics, our firefighter paramedics only have to be paramedics for 10 years. Contractually, they could obligate out, and for the current level of service we have with the advanced life support, we need to have some new people coming in who are also paramedics to keep that what I would call a budgeted number, a balanced number, to make sure we can continue to offer that level of service.
Yeah, we have, as Mr. Zorn says, and I have my paramedic coordinator working on the numbers right now, but we have 51 paramedics out of our 88 staff, and we have a number of those, well over half, that could get out of the program at any time because they've fulfilled their obligation of 10 years or more. So there's no indication that they're going to do that. We looked, I've only had three present staff that have done that, other than the ones that have been promoted out. And but for some reason, as we get older, it becomes a lot more difficult, and if the strain got to a level on these personnel where they decided to get out, they could do that if they so chose.
Yeah, the 10 years, is that a local agreement? Is that a negotiated agreement?
That's a negotiated agreement in the contract.
Okay, so once they're in, they have to stand for 10 years.
That's correct.
The number of folks that are leaving that you show here, do you know which ones are firefighters and which ones are paramedics?
Yes.
Can you share that with us?
I think the ones that I wrote, I think I had about 8 of them were paramedics
Yep.
over this period. I'm down here now for you. 1, 2. Some of them are my command staff. 1, 2, 3.
And obviously, that attrition will drive what we do in our selection process and the requirements, is what I'm thinking at this time.
2, 4, 8. So, out of the 17, it looks like 8 of them are paramedics.
There's about half of them are,
About half.
about half and half. Now, to become a paramedic, do you choose that, or how do they get into the paramedic program?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. We can hire individuals that are already paramedics,
Mhm.
or we train them and send them to school. There's a couple of, there's academy-type programs. LSTI, Life Support Training Institute here in Southfield is one. The programs could be, they run anywhere from a shortened program that is really tough, that's 10 months, plus your clinicals, to a 15-month program, 18-month program, I think it is. The community colleges have programs. They have to, actually now, they have to be under the sanctions of or auspice of a college. So even like LSTI, I think, or a hospital, I believe. LSTI works under Phosphid Hospital, and have it's a requirement. And Ken, maybe you can help me out with what the requirement actually is from the state.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to typically be under the auspice of a college, and that's kind of the way the state is envisioning moving towards. Sorry. Yeah, to answer your question, that's correct. Most of the paramedic programs are falling under the auspice of a college, so it's got to be like an accredited type of university. The state of Michigan is looking at that becoming an absolute requirement moving forward. So there are a few of these paramedic programs that are in the transition process because they're willing to put their money where their mouth is.
Mm-hmm.
So they're moving towards that process. And I know a couple of paramedic programs have fallen by the wayside because they don't have the means to affiliate themselves with the community college. But the thought amongst the state for several years, and they're still moving down this route, is it becoming actually a 2-year program. So paramedic school may not in the future be a 10-month program. It may actually be a full associate's degree 2-year type program.
That makes it difficult for communities that hire firefighters in and then have to train them, because it's a long process and it becomes very expensive.
Well, the reason I ask is, about half the people are paramedics, and from what I understand, the bulk of your runs are for medical rather than fire itself.
That's correct.
When the paramedics start to retire, how do you replace them? I mean, you walk through the station and say, okay, everybody wants to be a paramedic, raise your hand?
Well, yeah. In the past, we had personnel that were in waiting. They were waiting to be, they were like next on the list. There wasn't a vacant position in the medic program, and back when I went through medic school, I had to wait for somebody to retire or get out of the program, and then that opening came, and then the city sent me to school. Right now, I think I only have 4 firefighters that aren't paramedics that would be eligible to go to school. What I'd like to hopefully happen is develop a list and have paramedics on that list already trained at the city. It's very, very costly for us to put them through school.
Yeah.
Costly to the city.
Yeah. I have no problem with this at all. I just want to make sure that between the government and our own policies, that when we lose someone, we have someone to replace, because everything that I read about our paramedic program, and I'm also a witness to it, that we have top-notch folks. The doctors at Providence Hospital and other hospitals are writing letters saying, wow, these guys are good, and these people, not just guys, your folks are good, and I just want to make sure that we stay there. And I hate to have this come in, and find out that there was some fine print that we didn't read, that, oh, I'm sorry, you can't work your own program.
No, and the SAFER grant won't stipulate whether we hire, if we hire paramedics, we'll account for them in what we ask of the grant.
Okay.
That's
All right.
And I appreciate your comments on the quality of our personnel, and our award ceremony this Thursday evening will we highlight a lot of those life-saving and great work that the firefighters have done over the past year.
Okay, good, thanks.
Any other questions? This will come up on our agenda.
Madam President, to the council, I really want to commend our fire chief, Rowley, and Officer Wheaton. You know, there's this notion out there that grant writers, that any grant writer can write this stuff. You can take a good writer and make him a grant writer. But there is in the fire and the FEMA stuff such a level of where you need such an initial body of knowledge to even begin to write that application. And the fact that we have an officer who's stepped out of his normal mode and been willing to learn that, obviously he's developing a body of expertise in itself, but it truly enriches the department. And I see this as a way for the city to continue to offer a higher level of service for our residents and take advantage of, hopefully $3.6 million in federal assistance.
Okay, I just want to make a comment on it. It's like in the trial, when one lawyer asks a question, the other lawyer says, "Oh, you opened the door." I feel very strongly that we need a grant writer for the city, because as I read articles in the paper, there are other communities that are beating us to the trough for grants, and the one I'm going to bring up is Lathrop Village, and the grant they got from Michigan Municipal League to build a new city hall, and that's really going to be a problem with us as we try to develop what Southfield Road is going to look like. If they put a new city hall there, that's going to give them extra votes when it comes to how that's designed on that. So, but we're getting beat to our lunch is getting eaten from other communities.
Taking our lunch?
That's right. So, and I think if we had a grant writer that was out scouting around, where are these grants at, and write grants.
So you clearly have within the number of departments that you go through, but most of our block grant or programmatic type grants.
Yeah.
It's a scouring for the others.
Yes.
And I would say the same would lie for the foundations. The other item on the grants, and we're actually working with Plant Moran, is the fiscal controls in grant management.
Absolutely.
And particularly, there's new OMB requirements, the Single Audit Act that will start this audit this summer for us.
Yeah, so we don't have to worry about that if we don't get grants.
Okay.
And we're pretty sure that will be secured during this funding round for the grant.
Well, I'll let Ken speak to that, but he has been very successful. You want to say a few words on that?
There's no guarantee, Ms. Jordan, unfortunately. All I can tell you is I look at the funding priorities, reading through the program guidance, and we meet the high funding priorities when you read through that. So do I feel good about it? Absolutely. But I definitely cannot stand in front of you fine folks and say for sure we're going to get it. I wish I could. I can say I've gotten 5 consecutive in a row. I feel pretty good about that. So let's go for 6. Let's not stop there.
Yeah, and we still, just to remind you too, we still have the AFG grant out there that we have gotten permission to write for. I think they put that off because this is, if you see, it's a 2014 SAFER grant, so they're almost a year behind on that program. So they put off the AFG approvals, but we're still waiting for that. And we have the chest compression devices and the radios. So hopefully we get that, and that brings more equipment and
70% of this grant is scored by formula, in essence, based on what you put in. It's not part of a peer
50-50.
review. So it's automatically by formula, and in the initial review, we score very well. It's that 30% that can be your wild card, and that is peer review, where there are other professionals reviewing?
Yes.
Yeah, these grants are reviewed by firefighters, so they understand what we're going through. We speak their language, Ken speaks their language really well, so, and we know, a lot of the grant review people, talk to them, in class and in training, staff and command, for instance, and, they let us know what they're looking for.
So worst case scenario, what would be the contingency plan if this isn't?
Worst case scenario is, we have have 5 vacant positions right now that they were the top tier. Those are funded positions right now. So the worst case scenario is, we don't get approved for the SAFER grant, and I asked Mr. Zorn to, hire 8 people at the lower tier to bring us up to the 96 level. We'd still be saving the probably $50,000, hiring these people at the lower tier, because the people that are retiring are top paid people. They've got longevity, they have rank, so they'd be leaving, and we'd be bringing new firefighters in at the lower level. Now, there would be some replacement of those top tier people, so some cost would go up there, but I still think there'd be a savings overall, and we'd be able to maintain that 96 number. But we're hoping for the best opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. All right, next item on our agenda is soup kitchen homeless shelter discussion.
Good evening. We wanted to bring to the council's attention that our department received some inquiry in December regarding opening up the soup kitchen in the city of Southfield. And after review with the city attorney's office, we don't clear-cut define soup kitchens or how to regulate soup kitchens or allocate where the most appropriate place are for soup kitchens. What was a little alarming was the 2 locations that they proposed were actually office buildings. And so we're asking tonight at the regular meeting that the council enact a 180-day moratorium to give both the legal and the planning department more time to research this item and come back with some recommendations for council to act on. Now, I know we asked for 180 days, but I vetted that out, and it falls 2 days short of our August 24th meeting. And just to give us that extra time, I'm going to ask for an amendment so that it's 182 days, the moratorium.
Just so that the day after, 183?
Well, whatever you, I just was, August 22nd is 180 days. We have a meeting, the council has a regular meeting on August 24th, and should you want to act on anything that night, let's ask, I'm just figuring, ask for an extra 2 days, otherwise we lose a whole month of council meeting. And so what we would do, similar to other zoning amendments, we would do our research, we would come back, do a study session with the council. If the council felt comfortable at that time, you would redirect this to go through the planning commission public hearing, and we would bring some ordinance text amendment for your consideration. This particular soup kitchen, what I know, was not affiliated with any church or religious institution. We also, looking at this, wanted to address homeless shelters, and so we would come back with a package, a recommendation for the council to consider and discuss, but be happy to take any initial feedback from the council at this time. But all we're asking for tonight at the regular meeting is a 183-day moratorium through August 25th.
Question, Mr. Frazier?
Yeah. When you're doing your study, what things are you going to be considering? Do we want to have a soup kitchen in a homeless shelter here, or where would the best location be, or both, or?
Well, I think the council would have to direct us if you wanted to have one, but we would try to make recommendations of what districts are most appropriate. I would probably recommend, just off the top, that would be through a special land use process with certain additional conditions, and then if they meet all those items, and the council then could act to approve or disapprove, that also would give a public hearing process so that adjacent property owners could weigh in on proposed soup kitchens. We looked at this, we've looked at similar type of items where if it's too broadly defined in our ordinance, then a lot of different things could fall into many of our districts. And so that's the reason we would like to study what other communities, how they regulate it, how they define it, and where they're typically found. And we would come back with those recommendations. As far as whether you want them or not, that would be direction from the council, but if we go back to, if we don't regulate them at all, you're in essence allowing them to be challenged and be put anywhere.
Okay, now,
The focus would be to find the most appropriate districts for them to operate in with the least negative impacts on adjoining uses. So, I mean, I think there's a place in the city for, virtually everything, but what's the most appropriate district for those to be?
well, the thing that I'm considering is if we extend it for 183 days, which is the day after the August meeting, and then he brings it to the August meeting, and for some bizarre reason, the council says, we don't want any. I mean, that would waste 180 days.
Well, if I could, we would hope that in maybe 90 days to come back with recommendations at a study session, and then get direction from council to be able to bring it back if you should desire. We've done that on other types of zoning amendments.
Okay, well, that part wasn't discussed. All we're talking about is, let's stretch it out 183 days, and you bring it back, and
Right, obviously, for final introduction, that and the
Yeah.
ordinance, we'd look at August, but absolutely come back with what our recommendations are before we get too far down
Yeah, well,
the line.
I would
Absolutely.
certainly hope so,
Yes,
because
yeah,
we wasted all that time,
Sure.
and then,
sure.
okay. Oh, one other question. Is this another one of those, if we say no, the reasonable test?
Well, that's always the issue, those uses, I mean, again, it's what is the appropriate setting? An office building? Probably not, but certainly somewhere in the city, in some district, it's appropriate. I mean, it's no different than other food-type service uses, but where is it appropriate? Same with the homeless shelter. Is there an appropriate place? And presumably there is. Particularly as a special land use where the council can make sure that other kind of standards are met so that you know that it is the right setting. So, yeah, I think that the recommendation is not going to be from these two departments that we just ban them. No, I don't think that's going to be the recommendation.
Well, the reason I say that is, going back to the marijuana, if we said, no, we don't want any of it,
Right.
as some cities have
Right.
done, they find out they're running afoul of the state
Right.
and say, no, you can't do it that way.
Well, the only difference is that with the medical marijuana, there's a state law that says they're illegal.
Okay.
One of the concerns we're gonna have to do is make sure that, because you do have churches and you have religious institutions that do this type of work. And so we're gonna have to really look at that too, because if it's part and parcel of their overall religious function, those kinds of things can be addressed through a religious institution too, so.
And the way this was proposed, at least on the telephone, was a freestanding standalone. It wasn't associated with a religious institution. And therefore, someone could argue that, hey, this is most similar to a restaurant, and therefore all the commercial districts that allow it.
Right.
Another is fraternal, because this will be a not-for-profit as proposed, fraternal organization. And then any district that allows that has a hall or assembly. And so, again, it's very unlikely we come back and say don't regulate it, but through a special land use process and trying to define where the appropriate districts would be.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted to comment on this issue. There are a couple other factors, and obviously other departments in the city if we're working with planning. Obviously our human services, an assessment of what our faith-based community organizations are doing. The other piece, and there are things buried and statements within our various HUD documents that speak to these types of issues. And, for example, in a monitoring visit last year with HUD, one of the things is, well, what are you doing to help homeless people? Well, we do operate a human services program. We have an emergency relief fund. We do help people. So I think that broader assessment needs to happen and let people know. We currently have worked with Focus Home and a commodities distribution program that, I don't want anyone to think that we are void as a community of, basic elements of community support, because we do have those elements. And, I think this council, we've all struggled, we're the only city our size with a human services department, yet, they do some things that kind of low radar that we sometimes forget. So I think this process is going to include that. It's going to include, examining what some of our neighbors to the east are doing with their own shelter. And I also, my concluding remark is the police department needs to be part of this as well.
Okay.
I might just part of this and I'll cut it off a moment. A lot of the, over the years, a lot of churches and some other institutions have made available at night places for people to sleep, to get out of the cold. I don't know if it's still doing, I think it was done in the city, I'm not sure, at least on one place.
We had the rotating,
Right, I
right,
remember that.
it kind of goes a week at different
Right,
churches and it
right.
rotates.
And that's part of that
Right.
assessment.
Right. That's been
And I
done.
think if churches or any group is willing to do that, I think we should take advantage of it, because it's critical to see people out there in any kind of weather. I don't have, and I go up to 8 Mile a lot, I go in that area a lot. And you see people out there under the viaduct, and you see people, it's very sad, they don't look like they're facing at all. I've seen people off in areas that you don't see them, just trying to stay warm and stay, out of the wind, and they're not looking for money, nobody even knows they're there, it's so sad. I think anything we can do that, doesn't, disrupt some commercial areas, because I don't think that's, what we're looking to do, but I think we can provide shelter at least, and be part of that rotating system, whatever we can do, and if churches are willing to help, I think we're taking advantage of it. We've got, people can't turn their backs on everybody, it's not right. If we in a city, as a city, can do some things in an appropriate way, and, in terms of the zoning and so forth, I think we should try to do that.
So we took on our next agenda, and we'll wait to hear from you after we'll schedule a discussion.
So we'll amend this to 183-day moratorium, and we'll get to the regular meeting.
I was gonna ask the same thing, that we're gonna ask for this for 90 days update.
Oh, to come back to council in 90, I think that's quite reasonable. Sure, we better be getting in that direction by then, right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And I'll be back around May. Thank
Okay,
you.
the next item on our discussion is CDGB.
Madam President, we're requesting that council approve a transfer of $250,000 from our roof program to the community development block grant to eliminate an existing deficit. These funds ultimately, most likely, will be paid back. What you have is an accumulated deficit that is the result of an internal charge for staffing for a grant that only allowed you by statute to use 20% of its proceeds for administrative costs. For example, last year's grant allocation was $415,000, so we were entitled to $83,000 for administrative costs. Well, there were some years, and the typical grant has been around that $450,000 to $500,000 mark. You're entitled to 20% for administration. There were years where you had 2.5 staff members being charged to that grant. We have now, in the current budget, you have a non-career is the only person being charged to that grant at $32 an hour with no fringe benefits. So in the current year, you actually, on an administrative cost basis, are going to have a net of about $50,000. I can tell you, and with an additional amount of time, I can bring Rick Lampy in and go through the accounting back to 2005 on this grant. you have drawn down all of the money that you're eligible to get from HUD to date for all of your programs. If you spent money on it, you've been reimbursed. But you have this issue of the staffing that is driving this. When, you know, with 2.5 people, you're pretty much charging almost $200,000, plus you were charging audit, rent allocation, facilities cost of the grant. You stopped some of those things a few years ago. So, but the state law requires that we can't continue to have an accumulating and increase in the deficit. The June audit the audit at June 30th of 2014, the deficit increased by, Mr. Pierce, almost 20,000?
Yeah, I think it went to
over the year before. Well, it was during that period that we shifted and went to a half part-time person. I will say this, if you go over to Farmington Hills, their general fund annually for years, my conversation with Steve Brock, they actually write a subsidy to this grant program. So we've tried to run this particular grant, and when I'm talking about this is not NSP, that's segregated. This is not your Housing Commission, your Section 8 program. Your Section 8 program is sustaining itself and is accounted for separately in the audit. This is just your community development block grant program, and this is an accumulated deficit. And I believe you're now, the way you staff this at the cycle, had the state been willing to accept us to continue to show a deficit, it would be resolved in probably 2.5 years.
I thought that we always had extra money in the community block grant because of Shore and SHIP and those programs where we have revolving loans going on, and some of them were not being
You have
expended.
money and SHIP coming in,
Yeah.
but what you were doing, and I could take you back, there were some years you were budgeting $200,000 as program income. One year, $194,000 came in. One year you budgeted $200,000 and only less than $20,000 came in. So you were budgeting money that you weren't eligible to receive. Now, if you look at your community development block allocations, last year you moved money in your letter of credit, which is that was $295,000, which you cannot. That's not. Those weren't. You can't use those for administrative expenses. But you quit about 2 years ago. You first went from $200,000 to $100,000, and then the last 2 years we've not included any SHIP money as program income, because that was bloating your budget and leading to a perception that you had additional money for admin.
You're saying we spent more money than we received?
I'm saying you have charged more money than you're eligible to receive for administrative purposes.
Okay.
The bulk of this is in your administrative, and at one point you had a person upstairs, a person in building department, and a clerk in building department that you were charging to this grant. And so what I'm saying is we have overcharged in the administrative purpose. Mr. Pierce, myself, and Mr. Lampy are working through an exercise going back to 2005. There may be, and this $250,000 should cover it, there may be an issue with HUD because we were overestimating that program income. And when not the reconciliation of that program income to HUD, you told HUD you were going to get $200,000 and you only received $20,000, and you made these other decisions. We've got another issue that we've got to work through with HUD, and I've got a couple ideas on how we can work through that. But this immediate problem is a result of charging more staff, rent, copiers, tax, all of those overhead charges that exceeded what the grant had coming in eligible funds for those activities.
Is there money in the SHORE program?
In the SHORE program?
Yeah.
Yes, the SHORE program is a subset. You have drawn down all of your eligible expenses. You have budgeted for the last few years $150,000 for chore, and you pretty much have spent that in conversation with one of the council members over the weekends. The next neighborhood services meeting, we actually, for a monitoring visit with HUD last spring, did a full detail of what we've done the last 3 years in chore. But you have drawn down all of your chore money, and here's my point, you can't move that chore money to cover this, because you're only entitled to 20% for
You're saying our administrative costs went over what was allotted?
You budgeted administrative costs over what was, that's correct.
And the chore program, the seniors used to call and get people to shovel their walks, their snow off. And I see where we've given tickets like crazy to seniors for not doing their walk. And you don't hear anything about if you need help, call chore. In other words, I don't see the reach out to seniors who can't shovel walks. And then I guess that came up over this last snowfall, and I had seen $100 charges to seniors because they had snow on the sidewalk. And I said, do they know that they can call city and get some young people to come out and maybe do it for $10 or $15? And I just, so that's what got me into the thing. I didn't know what I did with all my community block grant books and papers that I had. I couldn't lay my hands on them. I wanted to see how much we had and how much we expended and try to create a balance sheet. I was very surprised that we had a deficit.
As part of an accounting exercise that we went through for a monitoring visit and making sure that we had a true up in expenditures, and Mr. Pierce can produce a report of anyone we've bought services for. Staff has excellent documentation and has done in this program a real nice job of documenting. I can show you who we've helped in an Excel spreadsheet by fiscal year, by calendar year. In a few minutes I can have it mapped out. We probably could do more for outreach. I'm going to remind you that just because someone is a senior doesn't mean they're necessarily income qualified for this program.
But this happened to be a senior, a couple seniors, so.
Yep.
That's why I mentioned seniors.
Yep.
I'm sure anybody handicapped or whatever, anybody who needs assistance would get assistance if possible, if we had the money to do it.
There was one item that our field rep was researching on in the chore program, and they came back and said 2 problems, or no issue. The no issue was we do minor landscaping and grass cutting. When the monitoring person came back and they said, man, we don't know if this is eligible. Because most chore programs are used for minor plumbing repairs, furnace type things, small roof repairs, those smaller jobs. I'll also remind council, a year ago, you allocated $140,000 a year of our home money going to Oakland County, and I spoke to, I'm going to ask Neighborhood Services to address this. Mr. Lampy has a report from the county and Oakland, and if you recall, that was my fear, one of my concerns or fears was that was going to be a first come, first served program. Southfield residents are getting that money, and I was worried that it might be going to another community. But I'll remind you, for years that money was going to the state and never coming back to Southfield. So we fixed that a year and a half. I think we're in our first full year of that. So about a year and a half ago, this council fixed that situation, and it's at least, and those aren't monies we can get directly because our entitlement allocation is not large enough.
For the next community block grant allocation, are we going to put that money back into community block? Or, in other words, we're taking money from another pocket and putting it in the bids? And I'm saying is, are we going to replace it back, or how are we going to?
Well, this $250,000 will clear out the deficit, and then they'll have a surplus of the difference. So it'll be 160. It'll be 100. It'll be 200. The balance in the community development, they'll have a positive balance that'll be recorded of 250,000 minus 162 at 584. All right, so what you're doing is giving them working money to deal with these timing, in this case, the bulk of this is about administrative costs, because we have charged down all of the programs. If block grant money was used for a program, we've used it. We've drawn it down.
Fred, this deficit took place over how many years?
This is, it's been accumulating.
I mean, we've had a deficit, normally you have a deficit every year because of the time. Always have a deficit. I mean, we had a deficit elimination plan in place that was supposed to take place for 5 years. We had a deficit elimination. The only reason it doesn't last right now is because that it's increased. If you increase your deficit in a 5-year span, then you have to do a new plan. The whole idea of bringing the money in was twofold. One is to give us time to get the state out of here, and have them satisfied, and then we can go back and actually allocate all of the stuff that we had. But the other thing is, it is the timing difference. Since it's a reimbursable grant, payroll comes out every 2 weeks. Payables are coming out every week. They're not being drawn every 2 weeks. And so we always need to have some kind of cash available, because that's what's going to throw our checking accounts off too, is because there's not money to cover this until the money comes in from the Fed. So it kind of was a twofold when we came up with the 250. It's like, okay, I want to get rid of the deficit, but I also want to be able to have a cushion, so from now on, there should never be a deficit. Even if there's a timing difference, at the end of the year, we should still say, okay, no deficit, because we still have that pot of money.
Let me assure council, Mr. Lampy and I have gone through every project that we've had an expense. He spent a considerable amount of time with our accounting group. Some point last summer, and after the 60-day period in a modifier, where we went in and accounted for all this revenue. At least once, twice a week, I could pull it up on the computer. After he puts it in, I go in and approve that. Those funds, if my action is there before 5 o'clock, are in the city's account in Huntington Bank the following morning. This isn't the Fed's taking a lot of time. There was a period, because our staffing, where we were backlogged. That was one of the first tasks Mr. Lampy had, was to go through and get everything drawn down. The timing on that happens around August, September of last year. And when I present this to Neighborhood Services, I'll show you the draw. I can go into its IDIS, and you go in, and you'll see a printout of all of our vouchers for draws. And the only thing we probably haven't drawn down, there are two things. I've only drawn down Mr. Lampy's actual time. Mr. Pierce and I need to come up with a way to figure out how to draw down the capture difference and document that within HUD guidelines. And we'll have that, between now and June, we'll figure out a formula. But right now, on roughly 20% of, call it 80,000, staff personnel costs are only going to be 35,000. So now I got to close this gap of this 55,000 to get it into our coffers. The other thing, if you recall last year's allocation, in our letter of credit on every project, when a project is closed out, sometimes there are dollars that haven't been spent because the project did. Well, the cumulative in that letter of credit amount last year was $295,000, and that's where the money for the ADA projects came from. Mr. Mayor, you were correct when you make that statement. You recall Councilman Cyber called me over the weekend. Your recollections were right on mark. That extra money. I can't use that extra money for admin because we've already taken our 20% off. And, let me just state this. The state is taking a very tough position on internal deficit funds. We did a similar action in 2011. From time to time, you do have different funds that do need the assistance of the general fund. If we were doing this like Farmington Hills and closing the gap each year, there wouldn't have been an issue.
Except they're using general funds to close the gap?
Right. Well, there are some communities that are comfortable doing that. Now, if we can continue on this model, and not, I like the model we're on right now, and I think we can continue it, but
yeah, it seems to me we ought to draw a bright line at 20%, and when we start getting close to that 20%, we know that we spent the administrative cost. Now, if we're juggling funds between programs, 20% for SHIP, 20% for chore, and, we start borrowing from SHIP and putting it in chore because more people need their sidewalks shoveled than they need roofs on their house, we're gonna get ourselves back into this trouble. So we need some method of keeping track where 20% is, so that we don't, over a period of time, which, this is not one of those things where it happened all at once. If it was like an explosion, we know where it was. But this is like a slippery slope. And by the time you realize what's going on,
Oh, we correct. I mean, since 2008, your fringe benefit cost doubled.
Yeah.
And in 2008, you had 2.5 employees there. And you had some things and all of those costs were being charged. 2008, 2009, you're still charging rent, audit costs. You weren't, that was adding to this deficit.
We'll talk about it more in the
Yep.
neighborhood services program.
But the control point is,
Quick question. If somebody is looking for, see if they're eligible for a SHIP loan, do they just go right to the county? Or do they, if there's someone they caught from the city?
if they can go online and fill out an application, the Oakland County Home Office. They can go right online. And actually, we've taken a number of the people on our waiting list and put them over to that program.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Hall, is this supposed to be included in our consent agenda for the meeting? I didn't see it on there.
If it's not, then I would ask for a Rule 10.
I'll move the Rule 10.
Because I have to have the response to the state no later than, I think, the 7th, but I don't think we have another meeting.
And if this is in and
If
accepted.
you have another meeting, then you would have, it would be a committee of the whole, I think.
I'll move the Rule 10.
We have a motion by Mr. Carter, supported by Mr. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And then I'll move the deficit elimination plan for the CDGB fund as outlined.
We have a motion by Mr. Carter, supported by Ms. Seymour to approve the deficit elimination plan. All in favor?
I have a question. Can't we just move it into the regular meeting without doing the Rule 10?
You certainly could.
As an
You'd have
administrative.
to, you'd have to just amend the agenda.
By Rule 10, we're doing it here.
I agree, which is always awkward
Yes.
because we say it's an immediate need to act when we have a meeting
Yeah,
coming up.
well, another 40 minutes.
You could amend the agenda. I mean, at this point, I
Yeah.
don't.
We've already moved.
Yeah, the Rule 10 has been.
I'm gonna vote no.
We have a motion on the table by Mr. Carter, supported by Ms. Seymour. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
My,
Okay, the next item
I mean,
on our agenda.
I don't know why we don't do business right.
I believe this was supposed to be on the consent agenda.
But we could have fixed the agenda.
All right, let's move to the next item on our agenda is street improvement.
The next item, I believe you have a realized item with the resolutions.
He's not here.
Gary Blanchett is with us. Last meeting of the whole, we outlined the 3-year action plan, and with this resolution, I'm asking council to adopt those items, as well as adopt a resolution authorizing us to go out with competitive bid for the bond, to be sold at a competitive public sale, and it also delegates the authorized officers of the city the authority to approve the final terms of the bond, to the sale of the bond to the low bidder. So we've attached in the resolution the project list for 2015, 16, 17, and then the scheduled the summary of estimated project costs as prepared by PM Financial, a map, summary of bond alternatives represented, and then to have the resolution as prepared by Miller Canfield.
Is this going to the regular meeting as
Uh,
well?
Yes.
I don't see that on there either.
You mean, when you said a low bidder, you mean low qualified?
Lowest, yes, in a competitive bid.
It's on there. So we could put it, amend the agenda to put it under the administrator's portion at the regular tonight, and that's easily done.
This one I personally feel should go under the administrator.
Well, I think
It's a lot of money, I mean,
Yeah.
sure.
Right.
Right.
People are asking us all the time
Right.
about the roads.
Right.
So there'd be like a motion at the beginning of the meeting to.
I'll bring it up
approve
under
the agenda.
administrative.
And then,
Mary, you're going to get to put this out for bid, this 15, right? Is that what that first issue?
Do you want me
Is
to?
that what I understand?
Well, this
Which
is,
ones failed?
yeah,
Which ones failed?
those are the library.
oh, the
Oh,
library.
that's the library fail.
Yeah.
All right, now this is the 99 million.
The library was the negotiated
Yeah.
sale, and this is a competitive bid sale.
This is a standard public sale, just the way you've done all of your other
Okay,
money
all right,
issues.
I just want clarification of that, so I get my,
This would be,
Dollar
for-
Street.
right, this would be the first series of the road bond issue, and it wouldn't be anticipated that we would do a next series for another approximately 3 years. Remember when we were setting up the schedule, for the 3-year incident?
you know, is the market improved or what? This was, you know, whatever percentage, is that negotiated?
Well, the interest
The
rates
bond
are
rate
still-
will be, but we have cost estimates, and that's the alternative schedule that Carrie's produced that'll tell you what the proposed millage rate will be.
Yeah, well, we would recommend, and you will have to set in July, before July, your millage for this issue, and we would be recommending it to be set at the millage rate that we discussed before, the 2.58 mil. Because, really, you're looking at doing this in for $99 million in multiple series, so you're gonna need all of that millage and the revenue associated with it to pay the debt service on the bond. Because, we accelerated, the first series is larger, because it's going to be $43 million.
That's the amount that we.
That's the amount we presented to council at the February, the last time.
In the schedule, I think that you handed out, we had the interest rate at 3.25%. If it sold today, it would sell like 2%. So, keep our fingers crossed that the rates, especially the, short-term rate, pretty short issue, which makes it very attractive, because the interest rates are very low.
This will put us on a timeline that we go out about April, mid-April.
You could actually, depending on when Treasury gives us approval, because the debt culmination plan, we could be in the market as early as late March with this issue.
Let's just hope the price of oil stays down.
We have over 60, we're over 60.
When you get into summer one.
We're over 60.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be the administrative portion of the agenda. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the property acquisition update.
Start. Council, this is just an update on the, where we are with the property acquisition across the street, potential property acquisition. Obviously, since we've signed the purchase agreement, we can't go in closed session anymore. Once we have that signed document, then we have to discuss it in public, and that's fine. What's happened between when the purchase agreement was signed and now is obviously we've been in our due diligence period. We've undertaken the environmental. We've also undertaken soil analysis to see what the conditions of the soil are for potential development. And we also just completed an ALTA survey so that the legal descriptions, we know everything is precise, and we actually, measured it out on all the monuments. So the environmental came back clean. The soil condition was also similarly acceptable. We met with them last week, SME, who performed the soils analysis, and their only kind of detail that they wanted to give to the city was that depending upon the development, if ultimately the development is more than say 4 stories, you're going to have to go down deep. There are some issues with clay, but we had HRC in that meeting, and their feeling was once you go above 4 stories anyway, you're going to go down 90 feet, and that's going to solve the problem anyway. You're going to go down further. So they had no concern. They just wanted us to know that is the condition of the soil. The ALTA was finished, and we're just finishing up the legal. So I wanted to bring it to you. Obviously, I think next Friday, the 6th, would be the end of our due diligence period. And if for any reason the council wanted to not pursue the purchase, this would be your opportunity. Again, it's based on the due diligence, which at this point we haven't found any reason to hesitate, but it's broadly worded in that purchase agreement. If for any reason you just decided that you didn't want to complete the sale, we're within that period, and you could opt to do that. So it was just I haven't heard that there's any reason that we wanted to change, but just thought we'd put it on the table before that period goes away, and then we're going to proceed to close.
Yeah, when they did the soil testing, did they also look at the compacting?
They did,
Yes.
right.
Good,
Right.
because remember the one that's...
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And the other thing, they were kind of surprised because they assumed there'd be a lot more fill material from when those buildings were taken down. They were actually pretty satisfied that there really wasn't. So that was something that they felt was positive. They cleaned a lot of it out, right?
Good.
So,
Okay,
Thought they had,
that's it.
but
right,
right.
This statement will lead to item 6, and Mr. Pierce will. We're actually proposing a budget adjustment. When we first moved on this acquisition, we were proposing to take it out of our economic development initiative. At the March COW meeting, we'll have Plant Moran in to present the audit for both the single audit as well as the city scaffer. And we did add to our economic development initiative another $1.2 million, so you went from $6 million to $7.2 million. But in your on-reserve fund balance, you also added another $5.8 million. So we're proposing to leave the economic development funds intact and to get this item be charged to the on-reserve fund balance. And I really wish we had the audit presented before we could go through this.
Yeah.
But timing-wise, the single audit was just wrapped up, but we'll have them both at the next March meeting.
Madam Chair, I had an email from a lobbyist that is messing around with our revenue sharing again. Did everybody get that?
Yeah, the formula.
But, to needs, it's not giving us back our money. It's going to be divvied by needs, by this, by that, and we've got to send a real message up there that stop stealing our money. This is crazy. There's a group up there that have enough votes to pass all this stuff, and they start touching our revenue sharing. If it isn't personal properties, revenue sharing, they're gonna have us, I know the reason why, I mean, they're hurting because there's a shortage. And that's, we shouldn't have gave away our money at that point. You know, now they want to steal some more to pay it back.
I didn't bring the audit, but one of the slides you'll see in there is the 10-year look back, and it has been on a decline, and although it's kind of leveled off, you're correct in any change to the statutory formula is a threat to us. I did see something, though, where the Citizens Research Council is going to step in and weigh in to that, but keep in mind, the county, the state's agent, they were hit harder in the revenue sharing debate than the municipalities, cities, townships, and that. And some of you will recall the old formula in the 90s was actually weighted at those communities that had a heavier tax. It was weighted back to where you got, and that was one of the first shifts they started making. So we will continue to monitor that. Capital Days in Land Acquisition Municipal League, March 24th and 25th. Am I correct with the dates? Usually a big topic, and I'm sure that will be there as well.
And my concern is, because we have any city that has passed a bond issue for roads will get less money coming out of the state because they say, okay, you've already agreed to fund your own roads, so we only have a certain amount to share, so we'll give it to those people that haven't had a bond issue. That's my fear.
They would have to make a wholesale change to the Act 51 form distribution, but that's not far-fetched.
So the aggressive communities are going to be held in the limb. The other ones will sit back and the legislature gets all the money and the city.
Yeah, the new city hall.
Yeah. How much money they get?
All right, we've got one more item.
No, what they did is they got the approval to go to the housing, nonprofit housing. And they got money, but they also got some authorization to go to the nonprofit housing to rebuild their city hall.
All right, our last item, Mr. Pierce, is the budget stuff.
Good evening. This is our first in a series. We were hoping to have gotten it a lot quicker, but I tried to do it all at once, and then I realized we're in the midst of budget adjustments. Given one, everybody got one? Okay, basically what we are trying to do here is start the groundwork of correcting. As you are aware, when we budgeted the 2014-15 year, we had the transition from administration and budget, and so many of the line items that we adopted were pretty much mirrored from the previous year, the 13-14. We said we would come back after I guess in most cases, like I can say in the legal department, council at the table approved her to hire a deputy and make another person full-time and with benefits. But that was not incorporated in the budget. Same thing with the treasurer's office. They were allowed 2 new clerical people to be hired, but unfortunately that was not included in the budget because that budget adoption was unavoidable. I started to try to do all the budgetary ones that were departmental and realized without having the budget hearings, I'm not sure I would get everything. So I wanted to wait until after the budget hearings, which we're having the next 2 weeks, to make sure I catch everything that's not in 14-15 that needs to be, that's been put in 15 and 16. But we had some other necessary items that we needed to do. So what I did is I came up with, like the original, the first one. When I went back to the resolution, when you guys came out of closed session to buy the property across the street, there was no mention of the source. And we had a problem, I just got with the auditors 2 years ago when we bought the Ramada, where the same thing is we really never said where the money was supposed to be coming from. You said, okay, it's okay to buy it, but we never wrote in the resolution where we were supposed to do it. So there was some discrepancy between what I did and what the auditors thought I should do. So in order to make things a little clearer on that one, I said, I'm going to just ask for a budget resolution. Again, we're just going to take it out of the undesignated fund balance because we did put an excess. And had we known, you know, again, at December, we were kind of up in the air on where we were going to land, and so we decided we're going to put it all in undesignated. Now we're going to say, okay, had we known that at the time, we would have put it in the other fund balance. It wouldn't be sitting in undesignated. So this kind of rectifies it by just taking that one-time expenditure, which is you know, fair to say, we like to take one-time expenditures out of fund balance. We don't like to take operations out of fund balance, but one-time expenditures are, you know, usually okay. You guys have already approved that. The next one is, over the last several years, we have been coming up with these problems with legal attorneys trying to purchase acquisition of property. The legal department really doesn't have the wherewithal to do that. We've never set any, you know, funds aside for outside attorneys or that kind of thing where, you know, we want something, we need to decide it within the next 2 weeks before the next budget, you know, I mean, before the next council meeting. So what we'd like to do is do a budget adjustment into the support services for $50,000, of which would be the city attorney would be the only person that would be able to access that if the need be. If in fact the costs come over $10,000, then there would have to be an immediate notification to council, because then we would be outside of our, you know, regular limit. If it's under $10,000, she has the ability to do it anyway. But we don't want to, I guess we don't want to stop something in the middle of ministry by we say, oh, we only thought it was going to cost us 8, now it's going to cost us 12. So we thought we're going to put just a discretionary amount of money aside so that she could, you know, the city attorney, I should say. The city attorney would be able to access that if there are any, and this is usually prompted from either a council or administrative directive. It's not, you know, something that she's going out to. I think I want to go and check into this. This was a 2014 fix that I needed to make. We approved furniture for the new conference room over where they do planning commission and over in conference room A. The previous administration approved it all come out of water, and really, when I got the bills and I saw them, I'm like, I can't in good conscience charge that all to water, because yes, we've been doing a lot of water stuff over there. We've had meetings, but planning commission uses that, ZBA. There's a lot of other general fund things, so I needed to say, okay, in order to get this through the audit, that the general fund is paying a portion of it. So I wanted to do a budget adjustment for $10,000 out of that unlimited for a one-time purchase for equipment. Parks and Rec, we've had a long time reconciliation with Inglewood Park. And there were some change orders that were approved, but were never really incorporated in the budget. And so we've had this outstanding item for almost, I want to say, a year and a half, for payments to the engineering to finish off the project. It's been sitting in the building authority. We didn't have the funding really to give the building authority the money. So this is a use of fund balance from Parks and Rec. I've already talked it over with Doug Black. He's in agreement that we would do a one-time budget adjustment so that we could clear off that project, and then all of the change orders and everything that was going forward would be taken care of. Another thing that came up was cable, and this was relatively new, and it really didn't have anything to do with our non-budgeting of the previous years, is they had some studio issues and I think some other monitor issues that they needed to take care of, but they really were not incorporated in this year's budget, but it was never even anticipated. So we're going to ask for a $75,000 use of fund balance in theirs, which they have about $4 million before you get to the next one, and then a $75,000 on the opposite side for equipment purchases. The next thing is, and it's going to be a slight change in our usual accounting, is because for the most part we've been saying that the cable TV franchise money is going to be just used for cable. We actually adopted a resolution to that effect sometime in 2011 or 10 or 11, I can't remember, it's a GASB requirement. But the council at any time is allowed to make a change. Given the amount of money that's sitting in their fund balance and the fact that we need money in the capital improvement fund for the very least the INET, which we may end up having to pay for, it was suggested to the administration that we do a one-time transfer of $1.5 million to the capital improvement fund, that will go over to the capital improvement fund, cannot be accessed without council's approval. Once it's there until you approve using it for whatever purpose. The grant fund, the next one is actually part of the state deficit kind of corrective action plan that I have to report. The grant fund also has the dangerous tree loans activity fund in it, and usually every year we'd get a grant and it would get adopted by council, there would be a budget. Well, last year no grants went through that fund, but we still had tree activity. Well, it was never incorporated in 2014's budget to have any activity. So we got a little note from the state saying you're now outside of the Uniform Budget Act because you have activity where there's no budget. So in order to make sure that we don't have that for this year, I'm suggesting a $20,000 youth fund balance and a $20,000 budget for contractual services so that we do not have we comply with the Uniform Budget Act. The use of fund balance, if I can tell you where that money came from, you guys gave $250,000 to that fund from. Okay, wait. Hey, one minute. So basically, and I just wanted you to be aware that the reason there's money over there is we transferred $250,000 to start the dangerous tree program. So, I mean, we're basically just reusing that money, and it just, for some reason, it wasn't budgeted. And the last one is another thing through administration. They've been talking about ADA and security upgrades for the last several years, and in order to get the building authority the ability to start working on a project like that, there needs to be some money, and so through administration there was a decision that we would use $750,000 of retained earnings from facilities and $750,000 of retained earnings from risk retention is right there in front of me, and we would use that to give the building authority the ability to start working on these projects. Now, this one is a little different, like the 1.5, where you're segregating it. Once you give the superintendent control to the building authority, that really is that is a project for them. But what I would anticipate is once the building authority gets going, that there would be an update to council saying, okay, you gave us the ability to do this, here's our project list and what we think are the priorities so that you know what they're actually doing at the building authority. Because right now, I mean, it's kind of nebulous. I'm just saying, give the money to the building authority and I don't know what they're doing. So I would assume that the building authority is going to start to hire some outside consultants to get whatever they need, and then they would come back with a project list that says, this is how we would anticipate to spend the rest of this time. And then, of course, the last page is just all the account numbers, because we put account numbers on everything.
How do you eat an elephant a bite at a time? We historically don't bring budget amendments to council, and I have said, as we recognize something, we should be doing it, not whether it's monthly or quarterly. So with Mr. Pierce, I wanted to start this in his opening statement. There will be a series of other ones. I'm going to ask the council to adopt this under the administrator's portion. I also do have a list that relative to the ADA improvements. And Mr. Pierce, the fund balance of facilities is roughly $3 million. So I'm proposing we take $750,000, and the $150,000 or the $1.5 million will take a good amount of the ADA improvements for this building here and just start this campus. So I'll remind council.
Facilities has $2.3 million.
What is it?
It has a $2.3 million net unrestricted, well, 2.3 now, 2.1, let's just say. But I will caveat with that. But the building authority usually every year gets about $400,000 worth of projects from them. So giving them this $750 is really not really giving them a full $750 because they probably would have gotten $400 out of it in the budget process alone.
I wanted to.
And then risk has like almost 4.1 million.
How much?
4.1.
4.1. I mean, so there's money there. Is my.
And
that's as we go through the audit. I'm going to ask Mr. Pierce next week. Flatland does their presentation, but I'm probably going to lead at some point either before or after, and just highlight the difference in our cap or fund balance. Because in the past, we've always let Flatland come in and do their things, and we don't come in and present our CAFR. Where they're speaking to the audit, giving the different trends, I would like him to focus on the CAFR and the changes in our fund balance and where we do have reserves to take on various projects. I'd like to circulate a list of projects, knowing it's my intent before the building authority proceeds, I would come back to council and bring this project. Council, you have approved ADA restrooms as part of a collaborative project with the Miracle League. We'll have a new restroom there. And then through Community Development Block Grant, you approved $305,000 for ADA restrooms at the Thompson Farmhouse. And as part of the Evergreen Road project, you've set your taps and your water mains in place. There was a very solid statement from one of our building authority commissioners, and I have instructed staff to schedule a meeting with the building authority to review all CIP projects, as well as the ADA compliance, and at a later date, we'll be reviewing recommendations of the energy audit. It's my intent to bring that body in a joint session with this group. But the statement that really drove this home for me from one of our authority members is we are a world-class city that really hasn't tackled this problem. And going through the funding, immediately after that, I sat down with Mr. Pierce. I had some ideas before, and that's where we came up with the $1.5 million. I know it's moving quickly, but, I actually at one point I debated taking part of this out of risk, simply because if we did get hit with a lawsuit, that's what we'd be paying for it from. So I'm going to go ahead and circulate the initial list of projects for this campus. We put an X to the ones that aren't part of this list, but it includes municipal, a new elevator, municipal building, new barrier-free entrance, court building, new barrier-free entrance, police building, barrier-free entrance, council chambers, new platform lift. Option 9 is pavilion north and south barrier-free entrances. Pavilion east barrier-free entrances, and the senior, we're already taking care of that. So, this budget, the 1.5 knocks out the court, the police, and this building. And I will come back in that joint meeting and go through this with Mark Brandt. And we actually had quite a bit of this work already done. And you'll see project cost estimates for each of these.
Isn't this building exempt?
Pardon?
Isn't this building exempt?
Well, there's been this argument that you don't have the trigger to pull until you're going through a renovation.
Okay.
And that's how we've always been able to do it. But I will tell, we do from time to time get people who get in, and particularly the elevator with scooters and that, it's tough to move.
Well, we have 2 elevators then. We actually have 3 elevators then.
Yeah.
Because there's...
We have a lot of elevators on this campus.
Yeah.
That's,
The one in Parks and Rec gets used an awful lot too. That's
Parks and Rec, if you'll notice, is not included, because we're hoping that'll be a later conversation with council.
That's so small. It's very small. Well, they're both small.
Yep. Yeah, that's the X ones are the ones that aren't.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I wanted to go back to the dangerous tree loan activity. You said that $250,000 was put into that?
Yeah.
This is revolving money, or it's not all spent out, correct?
No, actually, it's probably got, it's a loan. So, right, but the problem is but when the loan program first comes through, but when we actually do the trees, that's an expenditure, and so I didn't have anything budgeted for that in the expenditure column. The loan is paying back whatever they expend, but unfortunately, it was kind of the time. It is that, the whole intent of that program is, you're right, it's like all of our other, it's a revolving loan program. Because I don't have a capper either, we just have a dummy capper, it doesn't have any tabs, so it takes me a while to find anything. So yeah, there was like $14,000, but this, maybe it was $150,000 transfer, it wasn't $250,000. Because there's $150,000 sitting in fund balance, and the rest is interest income, which we don't get much of, but. Or the interest off of the special assessment.
Okay.
So, yeah, basically, it's money coming in, money going out, money coming in, money going out. But again, after the first year is transferred, it no longer has that, we no longer have that budget because it goes away. So each year, and I think one of the reasons why we never put it on page 15 is because there's so much on that page that he wouldn't put in another line for something like that. He goes, we can do a budget adjustment later because there's not enough room in that one line to add another budget. It was hard enough to get memorials and donations on there. So I think that was because I knew there was something at the end of the year when it came up, I was like, oh, I knew there was something I had to do that didn't get done. So, but yes, it is strictly a revolving program.
Yeah, for the attorneys, is that it can't be revolving because we don't get money back, but.
No, what we would do going forward, this is just for this year, and if she doesn't use it, it goes right back into fund balance. So what we would do is budget it each year.
Each year,
It would be included in the budget as a line item, a special line item that would be approved by the budget, so that that would always be there. You're gonna see, you're gonna see a number of those things. I mean, and it's up to you. I'm just presenting what I would recommend through administration's approval. There are certain other things that we might be going forward that I'm going to say, I want to amend 14-15 budget, and when we show budget to actuals next year, we're not going to show the adopted budget. We're going to show the amended budget because, of course, the adopted budget wasn't really as accurate as we'd like. And it would really, technically, show these people way inflated rather than really what we approved last year.
Okay, now, if I am right, these are adjustments to the current budget.
Current budget, I'm not worried
Now, is this part of the plan for future budgets, that all of these items that we're going to be?
Well, no, I wouldn't, the 3.2 is certainly a one-time. The correction for the equipment purchase is a one-time, the English is a one-time. The grant, I would hope to incorporate that into next year's budget resolution, so I don't even have to do an amendment. And the same thing with the building authority. The building authority, that part was normally, because there's also the problem with the capital improvement and the risk retention type funds, that we don't really submit a budget for that. And so we can use that, you allocate it, we come to you during the year and say, we're going to use this much money, and then we do a budget adjustment. So those things don't get incorporated in the 15-16 budget unless there's something that you want.
That needs to, I'm sorry, that needs to be reviewed because it's worthy for council to take a look at all of your revolving loans that you've established, what the initial capitalization was, what the annual activity looks like, what the balance, and at a certain point, you've got records of the outstanding ones. And then from time to time, there'll be the budget, annually there'll be a budget process in a line item, what we anticipate to spend. But with some, there may, from certain years, we may need to recapitalize a loan program. And that's where, I think it's worthy to put that under a microscope and take a look at it. But it's something I could, start with finance committee or neighborhood, maybe both, but we have a sewer loan program, tree revolving loan. We're, as a community, we've got a lot of programs that you don't see in many cities, and that's where we're very fortunate. I mean, few cities are in a position to capitalize those funds and then help their residents out.
Yes, well, the reason I say that is, we put money in there to replace furniture in conference room A over in the old library. But we've been talking about this room.
Oh, yeah, I mean, well, I don't know when you guys are going to have your, but that's through administration.
That's still a building authority project. It's still on
still
hold.
listed in there.
It's still on, yeah, I mean, it's still
Yeah.
a project. It's just that we've never been able to determine what we really want to do and how we're going to do it. I mean, I think that would be perfect for another, when we come back for the next round of budget adjustments, I have a couple things that I plan to present that are council related too. And so, that would be a perfect time to segue into making adjustments for that if that's
But should it be a budget adjustment or should it be a plan in our budget?
Well, it depends. More than likely, on that case, I would say it should be added to the 15-16 budget.
Yes.
Because it's not going to hit, by the time we get through it, it's not going to hit the ground running until July. So, yeah. But it certainly doesn't hurt to have that conversation so that Because right now, like I said, we have to transmit in less than 4 weeks, 5 weeks to the mayor, so, I mean, there's gonna have to be an input meeting, isn't there, usually an input meeting?
Somehow or other, we've got to get ahead of the game.
Exactly.
We've got to start planning
Right.
things rather than reacting to things
Yeah,
that we've done and.
Yeah, we
and
always play
then
defense.
fix the budget later on.
And be willing to do it monthly as it happens. I mean, there's no harm in doing
Right.
it.
Yeah.
It becomes an overwhelming
it was
task
not
in December when we're
considered.
trying, and that's historically what we've done. If I may comment, just to your point on the planning, my statement about the building authority, we're gonna go through CIP projects, ADA projects, do a follow-up session with with the energy audit. After that point, I'd like to ask council to do a joint session with them. I wanna bring I've got a number of new members. There are certain things that they haven't seen, but I wanna get their input on the process and see where we're going. I have also outlined for the library, I'm gonna be asking for this meeting first, a joint meeting with the library board, the Friends of the Library, the library building authority, the agenda topics, and I worked on this over the weekend. We're gonna define the role of each of those bodies, have a discussion about facility services, central costs from accounting, purchasing, other areas. There are a couple things, I want to also examine the various trust and agency funds that have been put in care of the library. And we have on the finance committee staff, we've got over, Mr. Pearson, well over $1 million sitting in trust and agency funds that we need to have a shared
We actually were
conversation on
directed
how those funds are going to be
to an eye.
and the other one, the library bond refinancing has saved the library $3.8 million. And the library can now restore some of their staff, which should result in some hours restored. But before we go through that process, I think all of those groups need to come together. I will also say that when you look at the 990s of the Library Building Authority, they need to be encouraged to spend some of their money. They have built a substantial fund balance, and with any nonprofit organization, you need to be supporting your mission. And they have done wonderful things, but when your fund balance is increasing at the rate that it is, I'm hoping a gentle nudge and, rah, they're part of our team and partnership and having the library we do, but we, want to see that happen. Mr. Pearson's heard all this morning, he saw my outline. The other thing I have outlined, and it has already gone to the library and staff and the library board, just a simple statement. What can you do in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and 180 days? And there are a number of things on there that can be done very quickly, very cheap, inexpensively, and it would be great to have consensus and buy-in on. Then the third group is the Parks and Rec Board. I would ideally like to have those meetings prior to going through the budget process. So as we're adopting budget, anything that we've done in this act, that we will not proceed, I can work to see that they're incorporated and moving forward.
Now, with the building authority and the upgrades to the ADA in this building, that's a chicken and egg kind of a thing. Do you say to the building authority, we're going to give you $150 million and a half, use that to upgrade the ADA thing, or do you say to them, we want you to do an analysis of this campus and tell us what needs to be done, then bring that back and what it's going to cost us? And
We
then
actually have an analysis that was done years ago that we dusted off and had updated. D. Clementi Siegel did it, but that'll be one of my starting points with them. Here's the analysis. We'll probably do a walking session of the building. What are the impediments to being barrier-free? And I think that's partly where, as they go through that exercise, to come back and have a council buy-in or authorization as to the pecking order of projects.
Yeah, because to me, if you say, here's a sack of money, go out and spend it, they'll spend it. But they may overlook some real important things. But if you say, I don't know how much it's gonna cost, but you tell us what needs to be done, and then we'll find a way to fund maybe 2 or 3 budgets, but,
I think we've had an incredibly talented group of people in there. With this, we could go through the analysis that was done, updated, establish that pecking order, come back to council. Here are the projects we want to
Good.
pursue.
Okay.
And if we could have that queued up, that we started with our next fiscal year, then we could put in place a plan of action. And realistically, we're talking a year to 18 months worth of work.
Oh, sure.
So let's start.
Sure.
One of the other things with the building authority, which used to happen, and it used to be a nightmare, is in the old days, every project was funded and the money was sent to the building authority. It's now on a drawdown basis, so when they have a budget, we give them the budget, it's allocated, and we can carry it over, because it's the building authority is a capital project, but we do not give them the $1.5 million and say, have at it. We say, okay, you sent us a bill, we'll take it out of the money and we'll cover your accounts payable.
Yeah, except they know what the budget is.
Well, again, yeah, so they can
So-
drive up but again, it was worse when they just had the money. It's like, okay, whatever. We can just, because they would say, because in the old days, the other thing was, if it's a building authority project and it's coming from the same funding source, you can move it from here to here, and now you're doing, some other park, or you're doing some other building that had nothing to do with the original plan, which we don't want to do anymore.
Okay, thanks.
I've got one question, Jim, as it relates to the cable TV and the transfer to the
Capital improvement fund?
capital improvement, is that gonna be designated where the funds won't be cut?
Well, it will be, because all capital improvement is direct, I can't speak. All of capital improvement, there is a fund that is called the Capital Improvement Fund. Mr. Seibert might remember back several years when he convinced us to put $100,000 in, and we were supposed to do it every year, and we did it once. So anyway, yeah, that money would be restricted in the Capital Improvement Fund. All money from the Capital Improvement Fund would be restricted. And again, no one would be able to allocate, touch that money without council's approval. So it sits, and it will be restricted in the Capital Improvement Fund.
For the INET.
For the INET, but we don't know how much the INET's gonna cost. So if the INET cost turned out it was only $700,000, and council said, you know what, we have this project which is similarly related, but we'd like to use that. That would always be in council's discretion to change.
That item would obviously have to come through council, through a purchasing process.
A bid process.
We have already bidded and.
Well, but they
gone through
can't even go to
analysis.
bid without
Right.
going to council to allocate.
Um,
Because the council would need to approve it. Because we're not really.
I'll make contact.
Yeah, we have to go now.
I will be presenting this as an administrator's item.
I have a quick question. If you're done with this, recently we've received 2 different complaints about runaway water bills. The last one was in our package from Charco Realty. Is someone resolving these?
I know we have Wayward,
You had an individual whose private home, whose underground irrigation system was leaking and they never knew. And
The other one's trouble.
we get, the complaints have come to council members. Obviously, we're not in a position to remedy these, but I don't think any one of us wants to say,
I've got like 4 or 5 we're working on right now.
you can have that, that's the latest one in our packet.
Yep.
I didn't get a packet.
I didn't get one in my package.
Yeah, it might have been not this last week, it was the week before.
When you're looking at, Fred, what's happening with San Marino? Did you
Oh.
have a meeting with them?
Yes, we did meet with San Marino this afternoon at 3:30. All 4 of the people who've asked to speak were in the meeting. In addition, since the President's meeting last week, I was able to call, they just happened to be having a neighborhood association meeting last Thursday. I was able to have both Lee and Larry there. The initial communications indicate that there was a sanitary problem. Their issues with stormwater. Barbara, I left it with them this afternoon that you were welcome to come to the Macau and speak, perhaps a less formal. but after their discussion, she indicated to me that she would come and speak on all of them. We are going through a level of due diligence. We're going to be doing an inspection in her home, a property on Easter, and as soon as it thaws, we're going to go in and scope or camera the storm system. Mr. Searles, you want to speak?
That's on the west side of it. That's on the west side of it. The east side? No, San Marino's on the east side, but I think the storm sewer's on the west side.
The storm sewer runs all throughout that subdivision. What it was, initially, the subdivision was developed with limited storm sewer available. What we have is plans that show where we've added on to that in 2003 when we installed water main. We added on to that, and we think that there's the potential that some of the storm sewer pipes may have been abandoned in place, and some houses were still connected on it. Over time, without maintaining that, it looks like it might fail. We're gonna camera all the new stuff that we know, new storm sewer pipes that we know where they're at, and we're gonna look for the something. But they didn't talk to each other about the problems, so we didn't know. They weren't even calling. One year this guy, 1 year that guy, 1 year that guy. Next thing you know, you have 7, 8 people that were actually re-tying into brand new pipe. We're going to go and look at. Originally, we were looking at the sanitary, but those weren't the issues.
So, what's interesting is we're going to create a timeline of what was constructed when. And when we go through our complaint log, and that was the first thing when this came to my attention, I called Mr. Searle and I said, Larry, what's in our complaint log? And it's not, and I think what's happened is people are starting, 3 or 4 people are all finding out they've got the same problem. We even looked at our risk log and what kind of insurance claims came on us, and we have virtually, how many claims, Larry?
One claim since 1999, and it was $3,000 cleanup from a backup.
And how many complaints?
There was 8 for the whole subdivision of actual sewer complaints, but that was where we went out.
And how many period, though? I mean,
since 99.
Since 99, you go through our record log. So when we look at it, we're not seeing a problem, but we're going to go through a diagnostic, work our way through. We've agreed we're going to prepare maps for the association overhead showing lot lines, the water main and storm. And unfortunately, this time of year, we just can't get in and do what we'd like to do. I could tell you the one NSP property on West Kaylong, I need to check the records there. There was a period where we had 4 inches of standing water outside the southwest corner of that home. And we had substantial foundation and drainage improvements made to that piece of property. And we might have been in the same boat thinking that we were connected somehow. So, and I'll be reviewing those records with Larry.
Are the city sewers, are they tied into the city sewers?
Sanitary.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Every house is tied into the sanitary system.
On the water bill, because you didn't finish that,
we're working on, that's not one I've seen yet. It's in the packet. They probably called based on the comment in there, they've called the water department and been told it's a council corrected.
It just took a tremendous jump, that's all. I mean, on the surface, it looks like the building owner has a very legitimate complaint, but I'm not the water department.
Councilman Stiver, if I can speak, we had the meter tested. We went out there, he had a large water bill. When we went out there, the meter wasn't acting like there was a leak. It wasn't showing one, so we brought in a third-party tester. They tested the meter. What I think is potentially whatever problem was going on in the building was corrected before we got out there.
Just so I can handle that, that's all I need. We get this stuff in the packet.
Okay, anything else?
We have the money.